Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
This month on CityCast Portland, we're interviewing candidates running to be the next mayor of our city. And today on the show, we're talking to our sixth candidate, Marshall Runkel. He's been involved in Portland politics since the 90s, most recently as Commissioner Chloe Eudaly's chief of staff from 2017 through 2020. There, he was deeply involved in homeless policy and the 2018 ballot measure that created the Portland Clean Energy Fund. Currently, he's Vice President of Local Government Affairs at Strategies 360, a lobbying and political consulting firm. We're talking to him about why he thinks he's fit for the job. It's Tuesday, July 2nd. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Being mayor of Portland at this moment in history is going to be such a hard job, but before we get to that, I wanted to ask you about an even harder task. I hear you're a longtime Blazers fan. How would you fix the team?
I would start with, I don't have specific recommendations, but my vote is that the Blazers draft players that are 6'7" or taller.
Okay.
We're in desperate need of help in the front court. And we need to maybe light some devotional candles for electing players that are better than everybody else thinks they are.
Right. I'm surprised you didn't suggest maybe getting some experience in there. But
well, I think, unfortunately, there's no quick fix for the Blazers or Portland. We're going to have to be patient on both fronts. And it's going to take, I think the city is in a similar spot where we're going to have to catch a break or two. We have to work really hard and be smart and get a little bit lucky. And that's my recipe for the Blazers.
okay, well, now that we've fixed the Blazers, if you had to pick just one thing that isn't working in Portland right now, what would it be and how would you fix it?
Well, the obvious issues that come up in survey after survey, like by order of magnitude or two, are housing and homelessness. And I've spent my career on these issues. Like, I did the organizing that led to the creation of the original housing investment fund at the city. I've been to, dozens and dozens of openings of new buildings. Dignity Village was my project way back when. I've been studying the issues for all my life. I've got a deep well of experience. And I think that we're just not connecting at this point. I mean, we're literally arguing about who's on the committee, what the name of the office is. I would say that neither of those two things is going to make a meaningful difference in people's lives who are out there on the streets today, or in creating any more housing. One of the more hopeful things that I've been working on in my day job is working with a group of providers that do what's called sober housing, and it's a scattered site, single family model where no permitting, no construction, no arguments about siting. They're allowed by right, and they provide really meaningful long-term housing for people who are struggling with mental health or addiction or both. And I lived next to one of these houses for many years. They were my neighbors, and they were great neighbors. And the difference between that approach and the approach that we've been pursuing for many years about building new apartment buildings, if you had all of the money necessary for a new apartment building today, the apartment building wouldn't be open for several years. If
Mhm.
it had money for this sober housing approach, it would be ready in months.
Hmm.
And that's the way that we need to be thinking is what can we do sooner rather than later? Because unfortunately, people's patience with government is running close to empty. And so we need to show meaningful progress on some of these issues. And this is an unpopular thing to say, but I think we've hit our nadir and we're bouncing back at this point. Like I think that there's still things aren't as tough as they were at the depth of the pandemic when I was scared.
Yeah, so you're
For our
saying
city.
we're on our way up. We've already hit
Yeah.
rock bottom.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we are bouncing back. And, unfortunately, like in sports, they say when you win a game, you can't get too up. And when you lose a game, you can't get too down. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's not how public opinion works. Public opinion swings wildly based on the kind of moment or what occurs. And I think there's been a lot of analysis, kind of right left analysis based on the social justice movement in
Yeah.
2020.
Well,
And
clearly you've put a lot of work in these issues, but it seems like we're still in as bad of a homelessness crisis as we've ever been. Like, what have you learned from those experiences that you could apply today?
I think there's a number of programmatic, like I was just saying, that sober housing is a slightly different approach than we've been
Mhm.
taking. I think that that's a meaningful idea that needs to be pursued. There's a dozen or more different providers who already do this work, and like that's a ripe idea to that we can do that would make a difference in months and not years. But it's hard for me to wrap my head around how the people out living outside have become the villains of the story. Like in any other circumstance, like if there was a natural disaster and people were outside, the whole community would rally to try to help people. And it's tough work. I mean, each one of the people living outside is a person. And when I first started doing this work, the hardest thing for me was I think it's popular in some circles to say, like, we're a paycheck away from being homeless ourselves. And I just don't think that's the case for most people. Like, most people have strong social and family networks that if something bad happened to them, they would be okay. And so the hard thing for me was getting to know people who are living outside. Like, all of those systems had failed.
Right.
And so I think it's a one by one thing about rebuilding, helping people rebuild their connections to ideally they rebuild their connections to their family and find some way back. And if not that, then build connections with other people that will help them. And it's one of the advantages of the sober housing approach is that in recovery, one of the most powerful elements of recovery is that the way that people stay okay and stay sober is that they help others.
Mhm.
That's an incredibly powerful force. And,
Oh,
you
no,
know,
I
you're
feel
not
like we're at a point where that's been proven. I mean, it's why certain villages work and, day shelters sometimes don't, overnight shelters don't, because in these villages, they're able to create, as you just said, these communities, these social ties. Let's talk about the process of getting these things done, though. Like, how can you get the government to move on these ideas? Like, what levers do you see that we haven't pulled yet from your experience?
well, I mean, a lot of people are saying this is meaningful collaboration between the governments. Again, like when we're arguing about the name of the office or who's on the committee, we're not meaningfully collaborating on positive solutions. And like that's what is going to be necessary. I mean, like the other thing that I've cited is the actual people in the joint office who are responsible for carrying out our plan
The county, yeah.
aren't aware of our plan.
Hmm.
I mean, that's something that I mean, it's easy to say, but if you look at the track record of my work, like helping people get onto the same page has been a theme in my career. There were hundreds of different organizations join the coalition to pass the Clean Energy Fund. I mean, Dignity Village, like that was my project, the first outdoor homeless shelter. Many people thought we were being crazy to even consider that when it was first proposed.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Dignity Village paid the city. They leased property from the city. Like it didn't. I still think 20 years later, it hasn't cost the city any meaningful amount of money.
So are you saying you would go back to those ideas, or?
I would say that as an example of a creative idea that it was able to be implemented despite there being some not unanimity about it being a good idea, but doing the organizing work to make it happen. And then once it was there, it became a place that, people rallied around. Like Portlanders have incredibly great values and are doers. And give them an opportunity to help and show them the way, they'll do it.
Mm-hmm. You were talking about public opinion and how it sways. And right now, a lot of people are frustrated with the way our city has been run. I feel like it's not just like a point in time where they're frustrated with now. They're just like, Portland, like it's become just like, oh, that's so Portland. And in some ways, you've got the most experience working in City Hall compared to all the other candidates. You've worked for 3 city commissioners over the years, Gretchen Kafori, Eric Sten, and Chloe Udaly. Like, how will you be a different type of leader?
Well, in many ways, I feel like I've been training for this job my whole life. I mean, my first job was answering telephones in Gretchen Kafori's office. I've learned the city from the ground up. Like, there's few things, areas of the city that I don't have at least some level of knowledge about. I think that's going to be a very important quality in this new form of government, just not having to start from scratch.
But I do want to say we will be changing how that city runs.
Well, I think that it makes it even more important. It's part of the reason I'm doing this is that, like, it felt like, let's just say this isn't the moment I would have chosen to change horses in terms of form of government, where we've got some other significant challenges. And so having someone with some level of experience is going to be a big advantage for the city. And my approach to doing work, that I'm excited to meet the 12 people who are going to be elected to the city council. I would love to work with them. Like, I'm the kind of person that I am. It's not about me. Like, I'm not trying to, most politicians are motivated by ego or attention. Like, I don't care. I'm just as happy working on someone else's idea as working on my own idea. And I don't need to get credit for doing things. Like, I'm much happier to have other people get credit too. If I'm successful, all 12 members of the city council will share one thing in common. They'll all think that they could do a better job than me at being mayor. And they'll want to do it. And it'll be an attractive position. And we'll get to a place where it's a stable, like the city is stable and it looks like it's a fun and good job instead of a job that people are said. I mean, I can't even count the number of people who said to me, Marshall, you're crazy to want to be mayor of Portland. Like, that's a terrible job.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that you would not be driven by ego, you would be collaborative. That's how you would be a different type of leader than we've seen?
And I think that solving our problems is not good enough. Like, we need to solve them. They're serious problems, but Portland's got to get its mojo back. We need to become a place again that is a leader, that does interesting and innovative things to solve problems that people want to do in their own cities. Like, I would like us, when we look in the mirror, instead of seeing all the things that we do not like about ourselves, see the things that are great about us. We punch above our weight in many important categories. We're surrounded by lush rainforests. We have snow-capped mountains, rivers full of life. We have a world-class symphony, an incredible local independent music scene. We're stuffed full of smart readers and incredible writers. Our food scene, we have some of the best food in the world and incredible chefs. Like, there's just many, many ways that Portland kind of punches above its weight class.
So, like, changing the narrative. We've heard that from a few candidates, changing the story of who Portland is and where we're going. Is that what you're saying?
I think there's something deeper than just the narrative and the story. Like, I do think that the story that we tell ourselves is very important about what we're up to and what we're trying to achieve. But I've seen this tendency, like, with our current, where we want to just, like, write a press release and, like, that's going to solve our problems. Like, we don't get to a place where we change the narrative just by wishing it so. There's real work associated with it too.
Okay, well, let's take a quick break here, and when we return, more with mayoral candidate Marshall Runkel.
Hi, I'm David Plotz, CEO of CityCast, or, as I can say now, thanks to a few weeks with Babbel, hola, soy David Plotz, el jefe de CityCast. What if in 2024 you got a little bit better every day? When you're learning a new language with Babbel, that's exactly what you're doing. And if Babbel can help me start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks, imagine what you could do in a full year. I got started with Babbel because I realized that my girlfriend, who's a native Spanish speaker, and my son, who's in AP Spanish, were conspiring against me, or thought they were conspiring against me in Spanish. I wanted to know what they were talking about. And now, thanks to literally just a few weeks of Babbel, I'm starting to be able to eavesdrop. It is rare that something so fun and simple, and Babbel is super fun and very simple, is also so useful. So here's a special limited time deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Let's talk about your record. Chloe Eudaly in particular, she was a polarizing figure those days. And it's not like you were just an ordinary staffer. You were her chief of staff. I'm curious, like, what you are most proud of accomplishing in working alongside her.
Well, my motivation for working with Chloe was that we were having an eviction crisis in the city. I've been working my whole life on affordable housing, and the rents were running away from us. Whole buildings full of people were being evicted. In some schools, a double-digit percentage of students' families were affected by eviction. It was literally tearing our community apart. And sticking a finger in that dike is definitely what I'm most proud of. Doing something that using the city's regulatory powers to limit rent increases is easily the biggest thing we accomplished.
Well, you worked on getting Measure 26201 passed, which created the Portland Clean Energy Fund. And it's been causing quite a stir. Like, we talk about it often on the show. It's projected to rake in more than $1.3 billion over the next 5 years. That sounds like so much. And there's a ton of ideas about how to best use that money, and also a lot of arguments. First, do you think the law is operating as intended? And secondly, like, how do you think it needs to be revised, if at all? That money is supposed to go to, frontline communities, meaning those that will be the most
least responsible for creating the problem, but most impacted by
correct. Yeah.
So that's the And just to be clear, we're the only local government in the country with a funding model like the Portland Clean Energy Fund. The taxpayers are corporations that earn more than $1 billion nationally. And over 100 million, I believe, is the local threshold. So I would argue companies that can afford to pay.
Right.
And so I think that side of the equation, I think we're okay. The other side of the equation on what we're doing with the resources, is not okay.
Mm-hmm.
We need to, I know it's a lot of money, and, there's a little bit I think can be ascribed to growing pains. But we need to get that. There's a lot of projects. The notion at the beginning of during the organizing for the campaign was that the community would bring projects to the city,
Mm-hmm.
and the city and the Clean Energy Fund would fund them. And what I thought would happen was, community leaders would jump all over this and think about creative ways to use these funds to help local nonprofit organizations that serve people with low and moderate incomes. Like, that seemed usually the problem in politics is
Not
figuring
enough
out how
money.
to fund your idea.
Yeah. But it's not happening. And you're saying it's because there's the lack of involvement of local nonprofits or, local city leaders
I
from the
think that
communities most affected? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not ready, and I'm not really super interested in throwing rocks at anybody
Mm-hmm.
or blaming anybody. I just think it's a problem that needs to be corrected, and there's plenty of good ways to spend that money.
Definitely. Like, well, yeah. Like
Getting
what? Like
that
what?
money out the door will be a priority. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, where should the money be prioritized? Should it be spent just on climate issues, or do you think we should continue addressing the wider array of issues with the funding, which seems to be
Well,
mismanagement of the city budget? So, I feel like, what do you think?
well, there's lots of ways to spend this money that are consistent with the mission of the fund. The
Right.
intended, and I mean, every single unit of affordable housing should have, the best possible energy systems in their buildings. I mean, and at very least, air conditioning, and not air conditioning a heat pump, that does heating and cooling, and helping people with low and moderate incomes get ahead of the electrification curve instead of being the last ones to adopt. Like, there's significant advantages with being first movers into these spaces. Like, for instance, electric rates have gone through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're seeing double-digit increases every year. But electric rates are no longer static. Like, you can sign up, if you look at PGE's website, you can sign up for what's called a time of use rates. So instead of just pulling electricity from the grid whenever you need it, if you're able to shift when you buy the electricity to periods of low demand, so you buy electricity at night instead of during the day, the cost can be a third. And if we could help people with low income stabilize their utility rates by shifting when they buy electricity, that would be a third of homeowners in Portland are low and moderate income. Like, I think this is one idea that I'll unveil during the campaign, but I'm really excited about energy storage and batteries. And because unlike solar, where if your house isn't pointed in the right direction or you need a new roof, 100% of houses we can put a battery in, and there's clean energy benefits associated with batteries. It's not intuitive, but when the grid is running at peak demand is when the grid is dirtiest. Because I've been in the control room at PGE and other providers when they're trying to meet demand, they're buying electricity on the spot market from all over the West. And like that could be natural gas. There's still coal in those mixes.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea, actually.
Yeah, because not only is it cheaper, it's more resilient. And like we just have to think about the electrical system in a different way. Instead of like a spoke and wheel system where you have these big power generators somewhere out in rural areas and then giant transmission lines into the city, we've got to think about like each building as its own kind of power station.
Yeah. Well, our executive producer has stated if you're able to get him an AC, he will definitely vote for you. So that is your stance just alone. If you're just all right, free AC for
right now.
Well, thank you for getting into some of the nitty gritty with me. I appreciate your time.
That's all. I mean, I tried to take to heart your critique about not having any specific ideas.
Well, I also understand you being like, they're my ideas. I don't want to give them away quite yet.
I do want to give them away. Like, I mean, that's why I'm doing this. You know, I'm ready to give my life to the city. Like, being mayor is a 24/7 job. You know, 365 days a year, and at any given moment, you get pulled out of bed if something really terrible happens. And I've thought about it. Like, I've seen up close, like, how difficult the job is. And I've been focused on my family. My kid just graduated from high school. And my joke is that this is my extreme approach to the empty nest phenomenon. Like, but it is, you know,
you're going to start raising a city. You're just like, you know what? I'm done raising my kid. I'm ready to raise the city. Let's go.
Well, I'm just going to be more available. Let's put it that way for the city.
Well, I'm ending every one of our mayoral candidate interviews with the same last two questions.
Okay.
One, I'm wondering what the thing you miss the most when you leave Portland for work or vacation. I'm curious, like, what you look forward most to getting back home.
Well, it's a long list, but probably at the top of my list is coffee.
Yeah.
Like, I had this job for a while where I would fly around and consult with other cities. And I remember I used to I called it the midnight plane to Georgia. I did some work in communities outside Atlanta. And I would land in Atlanta at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and get a car and drive out to where I was going to go to the meeting. And there wasn't even Starbucks. It was
so sad.
It was so sad. It was just like I kissed the ground when I came back to Portland.
Oh my God. I feel the same way about cocktails. I know that sounds crazy, but like, it's so hard to get a good cocktail. Like, God, I sound like such a bougie nerd. Never mind. Cut me out, John. I didn't say that. I said something really relatable and smart.
I'm a non-cocktailer anymore. Like, I've given up it's part of my commitment to being a good mayor is not drinking alcohol anymore.
Well, good for you. Okay, last one. What is your campaign song?
Brandy. It's in my love letter to the city. You can see it on my website, marshalllovesportland.com.
Brandy, you're a fine girl?
You got it. It's from, I kicked that letter off. I tell a story about how I first ran into Portland. I was 19. I was working the halibut season up in Homer, Alaska, and camping out on the Homer Spit. And my neighbors were from Portland, and they had this cool old army tent with furniture and rugs, and they had a turntable that powered by a car battery. And like the song I remember hearing is Brandy. Like, I mean, there were lots of other songs, but like that's the one that like kind of like it goes through my head when I think about those days.
Oh, I love that. They would just play that song over and over again.
Well, I'm not sure if they played it over and over again, but like that's the one that stayed with me.
Yeah. Well, Marshall, thank you so much. Good luck in becoming the mayor of Mojo. Thank you for your time, Marshall.
All right. Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, rate or leave us a review. It really does help us out. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you with Slims.